안녕하세요. This is the first part of lesson 7. We are going to mostly learn how to express auxiliary verbs like can, should, might, etc. in lesson 7. Let's start with a can or be able to in this video. Let's go. Before we start the main lesson, let's see how to indicate the third person in Korean one more time. We mentioned about this before, but we like to make it clearer with this one page. You use the pronoun he and she when you indicate the third person that both you and the listener already know in English, right? There are direct translations for the English pronouns he and she in Korean, as you might know. 그 is the Korean pronoun for he, and 그녀 is the one for she. Now it's on a Korean dictionary, but a long time ago, 그녀, which means she, didn't exist. So people used only 그 to indicate both a male and female. It's a quite controversial subject until now. Some would say 그녀 shouldn't be used because Korean didn't have such word originally. But the others say it is natural to have a pronoun which indicates a female as English does. Let's not talk about it here. That's not our concern at all. Plus, there is one more reason why it's not our concern. The thing is, people never use 그 and 그녀 in spoken Korean. Never. Well, you can use them if you want, but I will never use them when I actually speak. You can see 그 and 그녀 in written Korean though. For example, in a newspaper or novel. Since we focus more on the conversational Korean, you never really use 그 and 그녀 when you actually speak. Then, how do we indicate the third person in a conversation? Please take a look at these sentences. Where did your friend go? She went to school. Let's say this is the conversation between you and another person. Let's translate the first sentence. The sentence structure is going to be your friend where went. You already know that you don't have to mention the subject you and the possessive your in a Korean honorific sentence, right? We talked about this a lot. So the actual Korean sentence would be 친구는 어디에 갔어요? Okay? If you want to show more respect to the listener's friend, you can add 분 to the subject 친구 and 시 sound the predicate. 친구분은 어디에 가셨어요? Okay? We are not going to explain about the grammar here. Let's say you answer, she went to the school. In English, you use he or she to indicate the person who is mentioned in the previous sentence, right? How do you say this sentence in Korean then? The Korean sentence structure is going to be she, the school, went, right? But in Korean, you don't use the equivalent of the pronoun she when you actually speak. We'll tell you how to indicate the third person in Korean then. First, you don't have to indicate the third person because you and the listener already know that you are talking about speaker's friend. 학교에 갔어요. Without the subject is a perfect answer. Second, you can directly translate the third person using the very noun used previously by the other party. We use the noun 친구 here. So you can say that 친구는 학교에 갔어요. Okay? These two are the best ways. Or, if the subject is your close friend, you can just use his or her name. For example, 수지는 학교에 갔어요. Or, if the subject is a social acquaintance, you can use name plus she, job position, name plus job position, last name plus job position, and etc. Depends on your relationship with that third person. Or, you can use 그 남자, 그 여자, which means that man, that woman. Or, honorific form, 그 남자분, 그 여자분. If you don't know this person very well. One more thing. We've never really used it, but Koreans use the pronoun we a lot. So frequently used pronouns are I and we. Koreans don't use the pronoun you, he, she, and they in an honorific sentence. But they use them in a less formal or informal sentence though. What does it tell you? It means Koreans don't like to indicate someone with a just pronoun except themselves. They try to show some respect at least in an honorific sentence by avoiding from indicating someone with just a pronoun. Got it? The pronoun we is 우리, 우리. In Korean, it has an honorific form as the pronoun I, 나, has an honorific form 저. The honorific form of 우리 is 저희, 저희. Be careful, the compound vowel 의 is pronounced more like the vowel 이 than 의, 저희, 저희. Don't worry about the pronunciation, it's okay even though you pronounce it 저희, 저희. Let's learn more specifically about the pronunciation of the vowel 의 later again. Okay? Very good. In lesson 7, we are going to learn mainly about modals, auxiliary verbs that you always use in your real-life conversation. You don't have to know the definition of a modal or auxiliary verb if you are not a big fan of English grammar. They are not exactly the same thing, but you don't have to know the exact meaning of the English grammar terms to learn Korean. There are grammatical elements that can be called auxiliary verb in Korean too. It's more like an assistant verb, but anyway, they don't work exactly like the English auxiliary verb does, so you don't have to try to find the correlation between them. Let's see what we are going to learn in lesson 7 briefly then. When you have an ability or opportunity to do something, you use can or be able to in English, right? We are going to learn how to indicate that you have an ability or opportunity to do something in Korean. Next, when you want to indicate that it is necessary for something to happen, you use must, had to, or should in English, right? Of course, you use should to give advice or to give an opinion too. Furthermore, the exact usages of each are different in English, but you don't have to know all that at this point. Anyway, we are going to learn how to say that it is necessary to do something in this lesson. Next, possibility. We've learned about this in lesson 4 already, but we guess you don't really remember what it was because we haven't used it. So let's learn about it again and utilize more in this lesson. And probably you will learn how to say I think and I guess relating to the possibility because you use I think or I guess when you talk about the possible situation too. You will see what we are talking about later. Maybe it is one of the hardest parts in learning Korean. Various types of conjugations of predicates. Maybe you will never be able to learn all of them. It's a good news because it means you don't have to learn all of them at one time. Let's see how far we can go in this lesson 7. And then you will learn the rest of them later. Let's learn how to say I can do something in Korean. The big difference between English and Korean is the sentence structure. When you use an auxiliary verb in English, you position it right before a main verb. But in Korean, you position the assistant verb, which works like an English auxiliary verb, right after main verb. You don't have to know what assistant verb is. It's just another verb which assists the main verb in a sentence. It adds an extra meaning or nuance to the main verb in Korean. That's it. Let's just see how it looks like first then. When you want to say you can do something, you add the final L consonant if there is no final consonant in the last letter of the stem, or 을 sound if there is a final consonant in the last letter of the stem, plus 수 있다, 수 있다 to the stem of the main verb. Again, final L or 을 sound plus 수 있다, 을 수 있다. We'll break it down and explain about it nicely. You can find something familiar here though, right? 있다. You've seen this predicate plenty of times already. As you know, 있다 is used to mean to have, to exist, and to be at a location. You also use this 있다 for the present continuous tense with the form of 고 있다. How about this 수 sound? We've never seen this one before. This 수 can be both a noun and dependent noun. When it's used as a noun, it means a way, method, or means to do something. When it's used as a dependent noun, it means someone's ability or possibility to do something. They both are kind of in the same line no matter whether it's used as a noun or a dependent noun. Anyway, this 수 in 수 있다 is used as a dependent noun. It cannot be used alone. It always has to be used with the predicate 있다. And 수 means ability as a dependent noun. So you just need to remember 수 and 있다 together. 수 있다. 수 있다. Ability, have. Now you can already see why it can be used as the equivalent to the English modal can. How about the final l and 을 sound part? Where did you see this? Yes, when you learn about the future tense form of a predicate and predicate modifier. Yes, this final l and 을 sound turn the stem into a modifier form which indicates assumption, expectation, or possibility. That's why it's used for the future tense. Now you get it? It's like you say you have an ability that you will do something. Of course, you don't talk like this in English. You rather say you have an ability to do something, right? Final l consonant or 을 sound takes the role of that I will part or preposition to part. So the English verb have can be substituted by 있다, and the English noun ability can be substituted by 수. And if you use the simplest verb 하다, that I will do part or to do part can be substituted by the stem 하 plus final l consonant, which turns into 할. 할. Therefore, 할 수 있다. 할 수 있다 means can do. Okay? Now you perfectly understand how to say you can do something in Korean. This 수 있다 can be also used to indicate the possible situation in the future. You don't have to know that right now, but it's so obvious because you can use can for that purpose even in English. Then let's learn how to say you cannot do something. This one is very interesting. Do you remember the predicate which has the opposite meaning to 있다? We learned very well about this before. Yes, it's 없다. 없다, which means not have, doesn't exist, and something is not at a location. Do you remember? If you don't, remember it now. The second s consonant of the consonant cluster is not pronounced unless it meets the round empty consonant in the next block. You know you never pronounce both of the consonants in the consonant cluster at the same time, don't you? So if you just swap 있다 with 없다, it will mean cannot. Final l or 을 sound plus 수 없다. Of course, in a real life conversation, you normally add 어요 to the stem. The stem of 없다 is 없. If you add 어요 to the stem, the second final s consonant of the consonant cluster moves up to the initial of the next block. So it becomes 없어요. 없어요. But this 서 sound turns into 서 sound because of the final b consonant in the formal block up. It's one of the pronunciation rules that you've already learned. So it becomes 없어요. 없어요. If you don't remember the pronunciation rule, just move on. We'll talk about it over and over again, okay? There is one more way to say you cannot do something in Korean. Actually, this one is more frequently used in a conversation. So listen carefully. This one is actually easier to use than 수 없다. You just need to add another negative adverb, 못. 못 sound before the main verb. Again, 못 plus the main verb. Do you remember the negative adverb that you've already learned? The negative adverb 안. 안. You use 안 sound to say you don't do something. And 못 sound to say you cannot do something. It's easy, right? So when you can do something, you use 을 수 있어요. 을 수 있어요. And when you cannot do something, you use 을 수 없어요. 을 수 없어요. Or 못 plus verb. Let's make an actual sentence. Can you speak Korean? Well, native English speakers use do you speak rather than can you speak when they ask someone whether he or she speaks a particular language, especially English. Of course, they use can you speak too in a different situation. Let's not talk about the difference between do you speak and can you speak here. We guess some of you guys use do you speak in your country when you ask someone if he or she speaks a particular language, while the others, like Koreans, use can you speak. Koreans use can you speak because they think that a foreign language is something you should study to speak, and it's related to your ability. That's it. So you might often hear Koreans saying that can you speak Korean or can you speak English, even in English. Anyway, let's learn how to say can you speak Korean in Korean. Let's rearrange the words first. It's easy, isn't it? You put the subject you first and then the object Korean and put the verb speak and put the auxiliary verb can at the end of the sentence. You, Korean, speak can or can speak, whatever. You know you don't use the pronoun you in a Korean honorific sentence. Korean, which means Korean language. 한국말 or 한국어. Let's use 한국말 with the pure Korean word 말, which means a speech, word, or language. 한국어 means also Korean language. Just 어 part has a Chinese origin. But people use 한국어 a lot too, so you can use any of them. We'll use 한국말 though. Speak can or can speak. You can use 말하다 to mean to speak in Korean. As you know, 말 means a speech, word, or language. 하다 means the most basic verb do. No wonder why 말하다 means to speak, right? 말하다 also can mean say, talk, and tell. The exact usages of each are different in English, but you don't have to worry about it. Yes, there are a couple of more verbs which can mean speak, say, talk, or tell in Korean too. But we guess this verb, 말하다, will be enough for you for a while. So let's use this verb, 말하다. But when you use this verb, 말하다, with a noun which means a language or something related to verbal expression, you take out the first letter, 말, from the verb, 말하다, and use only 하다 part, which originally means to do. Are you okay with this? We learned about this before. So because of the fact that the object Korean, 한국말, is something related to verbal expression, furthermore, it also has the same word 말. You should use only the 하다 part of the verb 말하다. Cool? Okay. The stem of the verb 하다 is 하. 하 doesn't have a final consonant. Therefore, you add final l consonant to the stem 하 and 수 있어요. 할 수 있어요. Korean, 한국말, speak can, 할 수 있어요. It's a question. 할 수 있어요? Make a rising tone. 한국말 할 수 있어요? 한국말 할 수 있어요? It's nothing, right? Yes, you can add the object particle 을 to 한국말. But in many cases, Koreans don't use the object particle in a real-life conversation, unless you want to emphasize the object. The main role of the postposition particle in Korean grammar is to indicate the exact relationship of the word before it with the main verb. So if you use the object particle, it sounds like you're emphasizing that this is the object. 한국말을 할 수 있어요? It sounds like you emphasize the object Korean. What? Can you speak Korean? That's amazing kind of situation, okay? Otherwise, you can casually ask, can you speak Korean? 한국말 할 수 있어요? Without the object particle 을. 한국말 할 수 있어요? It's totally okay in spoken Korean. 한국말 할 수 있어요? Let's answer to this question. Yes, I can speak Korean. Yes, I, Korean, speak can. Yes, you can use 네 or 예 for yes in Korean honorific sentence. Let's use 네 here. Yes, 네. I. You don't have to mention the subject I. Korean, 한국말, 한국말. Did you realize that 한국말 is actually pronounced 한국말 with 궁 and final 응 sound? Yes, according to one of the Korean pronunciation rules, 한국말 should be pronounced 한국말, 한국말. But I think it's totally okay even though you pronounce it 한국말. Let's learn about it very soon. Anyway, Korean language is 한국말. Speak can. 할 수 있어요. 할 수 있어요. Did you realize that 수 is pronounced 수 with the stronger sound, 할 수. When the final 르 or 을 sound is added to the stem, the next 그, 드, 부, 스, 즈 consonant is pronounced with a stronger sound, 그, 드, 부, 스, 즈. Let's talk more about it very soon. Anyway, it's pronounced 할 수 있어요. Yes, I, Korean, speak can. 네, 한국말 할 수 있어요. 네, 한국말 할 수 있어요. And you just answer yes I can without the main verb and object in English. You can get rid of the object in this sentence too, but you cannot get rid of the main verb because there is no auxiliary verb which contains the meaning of the main verb from the previous sentence in Korean. So, in spoken Korean, it's totally okay to say yes, speak can. 네, 할 수 있어요. 네, 할 수 있어요. It's a perfect answer too. Then how to say no, I cannot speak Korean. No, I, Korean, speak cannot. No, 아니요, Korean, 한국말, 한국말, speak cannot, 할 수 없어요, 할 수 없어요. Be careful, 수 is pronounced 수 because of the final 르 consonant in the previous block. And 없어요 is pronounced 없어요, 없어요 with the 서 sound because of the 브 consonant in the previous block. 아니요, 한국말 할 수 없어요. 아니요, 한국말 할 수 없어요. This is a correct sentence, but as we said, we recommend the negative adverb 못, which is used to mean that you don't have an ability to do something. 못 is also used when you cannot do something while you want to do something. So, no, 아니요, Korean, 한국말, cannot, 못, speak. The basic form of the verb speak is 말하다. But as we explained, you just need to use 하다 part when you use this verb with a language or some forms of verbal expression, such as a story. So you just need to say 해요 instead of 말해요. No, 아니요, Korean, 한국말, cannot, 못, speak, 해요, 아니요, 한국말 못해요. If you pronounce it more naturally, 아니요, 한국말 못해요. 아니요, 한국말 못해요. 못해요 part is actually pronounced 못해요. 못해요 with the 태 sound. Why? We'll tell you very soon. But if you don't remember any of these rules which make you bang your head against the wall, you can just pronounce what is written, no problem. 아니요, 한국말 못해요. Or 아니요, 한국말 못해요. 아니요, 한국말 못해요. Now is the time for you to take the Korean pronunciation rules more seriously. We believe you are already on that level now. We know this pronunciation rule really drives you crazy. But you got to learn it properly from the very beginning. Otherwise, you will never be able to correct your fixed habits later. We call it fossilization. We told you that we didn't think pronunciation is very important when you learn Korean. We actually lied about it because we didn't want you to be worn out after spending a lot of time just on pronunciation. We didn't want you to be stuck in pronunciation zone. Pronunciation is of course very important, whichever language you learn. If your pronunciation is very good, people will think you speak very good Korean, even though all you know is 안녕하세요 and stuff. And they'll think you are a very quiet person. That's why we are here, to make you more talkative. I'll tell you something. There are too many pronunciation rules in Korean. There are 30 clauses of the standard pronunciation rules. Those are really complicated even for me and native Koreans. Good news is, no good people in Korea can explain what kind of pronunciation rules there are exactly. Because they learned how to speak first before they learned how to write. Therefore, you don't have to know all of them either. Funny thing is, there are things which are not even mentioned in the standard pronunciation rule, but actually happen when you speak. So we suggest that you should just start with the more obvious ones first, and learn one by one after another, after you master what you've already learned. Or just focus on conversational way to speak Korean and learn the sound without studying the standard rule while you're talking. If you can't think of the correct pronunciation rule for a certain combination, when you read something, you just read what is written. Someone might correct you. But once you learn one rule, please try to apply that rule when you are talking or reading Hangul. Let's start with something you already know. The principle of 7 final sounds. If you're not familiar with this, please watch lesson 2.1 one more time. According to the Korean standard pronunciation rule, only 7 sounds can come as a final sound of a block. Again, the only 7 sounds can come as a final sound of a block. Please don't mix up. We are talking about the pronunciation, the sound, not consonant itself. So when you write Hangul, of course you can use all the 14 consonants and 5 double consonants and consonant clusters as a final of a block, according to the spelling. However, the sound itself should be regarded as one of these 7 sounds. We explained very well about this in lesson 2.1, so let's not waste our time on this one anymore. Next one is sound linking. Basically, it's about the round empty consonant in. When this in, the round empty consonant, comes as the initial of a block, not only takes the final sound of the former block, but also the final consonant of the former block actually moves up to the initial of the next block and takes the position of the round empty consonant in. But you should know that this rule is applied mostly to particles, endings, suffixes, and letters within a word. There are exceptions, but you don't have to know that right now. It's too complicated. Again, it happens when the letter which has consonant as an initial doesn't have an independent meaning itself. In other words, when it cannot be used alone. So this sound linking rule is applied mostly to particles, endings, suffixes, and letter within a word. It might or might not happen to a combination of 2 words. Let's see some examples. 사람은. 사람 means a person, and 은 is the auxiliary particle. When you read this, you don't read it 사람은. You read this 사람은. 사람은. This sound linking happens in English too. You know that, especially when you speak faster and smoother. It makes you sound more fluent, so it is important to learn this rule properly to sound better when you speak Korean too. The difference is, there is a rule for the sound linking in Korean. It is reflected on writing or transcription, whatever you call it. It is grammatized in Korean. Is there such word? Anyway, you know what I mean. Let's see the next word. 작은. 작 is the stem of the adjective 작다. 작다, which means small. And 은 is the ending of the modifier form, which turns an adjective into an adjective modifier. When you read this word, you don't read it 작은. You should read it 작은, 작은, 작은. It sounds more natural and smoother. Let's see the next word. 언어. This is one word which means a language. The final n consonant moves up to the initial of the next block and takes the position of the original u consonant, which is empty sound consonant. So when you read this, you read it 언어, 언어, rather than 언어. Okay? This sound linking rule is very powerful, so it precedes the principle of 7 final sounds. Let's see an example to understand what it means. 꽃. 꽃 is a noun which means a flower. Let's add the object particle 을. 꽃 and 을. 꽃을. According to the 7 final sounds rule, the final ch consonant actually sounds d consonant when it's used as a final. Then it was supposed to sound 꽃을, 꽃을, but that's no-no. Sound linking rule happens first before the principle of 7 final sounds is applied. Therefore, 꽃을 should be read 꽃을, 꽃을, without applying 7 final sounds rule, okay? Yes, there are exceptions, but let's not talk about it here. It will make you want to kill yourself. Let's see the next example. 있어요. This is a predicate which means to be at a location, to have, or to exist. It is a stem and 어요 is an ending. Where double consonant is used as a final and the next block has consonant as an initial, you can think that the entire double consonant goes up to the initial of the next block. Be careful, double consonant and consonant cluster are two different things. Double consonant has two same consonants, and consonant cluster has two different consonants. Double consonants can be used as an initial, but consonant clusters never be used as an initial. Or you can think that only the second consonant of the double consonant goes up and the first consonant remains. So it어요 becomes it서요. But according to the 7 final sounds rule, the final s consonant has to become d consonant. And according to another pronunciation rule that you've already learned earlier, 서 sound should become 서 sound because of the final d consonant in the formal block. So it becomes 있어요, 있어요. You can remember whichever you want. The first one is from the standard grammar book though. Why two different ways? You will know. On this page, you should remember that this sound linking rule is applied to mostly particles, endings, suffixes, and within the smallest unit of a word. Let's talk about consonant clusters. What kind of pronunciation rules did you learn for consonant clusters? You never pronounce both of the consonants in the consonant cluster at the same time. Let's call it sound simplification. Then which one to pronounce? There's a principle and exceptions. We are not going to learn about the exceptions here, but probably people would not find any error even though you apply this principle to the exceptions. We'll see. Please take a look at this table. This principle is applied when the letter, which has a consonant cluster as a final, has come at the end of a word, or right before any initial consonant except the consonant the round empty no sound consonant. It's very easy to remember because it means it happens all the time unless it meets the round empty consonant. Because Korean writing block always starts with a consonant. Okay, please see the table again. The consonant clusters on the left are the ones of which the first consonant is pronounced. And the consonant clusters on the right are the ones of which the second consonant is pronounced. It's not that difficult to memorize because there are only 3 consonant clusters on the right. L, G, L, M, and L, P consonant clusters. So you just need to remember these 3 consonant clusters of which the second consonant is pronounced when they come as the last letter of a word or right before any consonant except U consonant. When you see other consonant clusters than these 3, you just pronounce the first consonant and the second one is silent. Well, there are exceptions, but we don't think you'd have a problem even though you just apply this principle all the time. But there are exceptions for sure. We'll see later if you need to know them. Let's see some examples. Please take a look at this letter. Can you read this? It's a noun and it means chicken. And it's read 닭, 닭. Therefore, first L consonant of the consonant cluster is silent. Under what circumstances? Yes, when it is the last letter of a word or when it meets any consonant right after except the round empty consonant U. Let's see the next example. It's the basic form of an adjective short. The stem has the consonant cluster L and B. Which one to pronounce? According to the principle that you've just learned, you need to pronounce the first consonant L, and the second B consonant is silent. So you read it 짧다, 짧다. Did you find something strange? It's supposed to be pronounced 짧다, but it's pronounced 짧다 with a ta sound rather than ta sound. It's because one more pronunciation rule is applied here. You actually learned about this rule, but let's not talk about it. Don't worry, we'll talk about it sometime soon. Anyway, it's pronounced 짧다, 짧다. However, when the consonant cluster meets initial U, the round empty consonant in the next block, the first consonant makes its sound with its own block, and the second consonant takes the position of the initial of the next block, especially when the ion contained block is particle, ending, or suffix. You can think that this is a fixed rule. So when the stem 짤 from the basic form 짧다 meets the ending 은, the first L consonant of the consonant cluster makes its sound with its own block, and the second B consonant moves up to the initial of the next block. So it becomes 짧은, 짧은. Okay? Then let's add a subject particle E to the word chicken, 닭. The L consonant is silent when it's read alone, or with another consonant in the next block. But when it meets U consonant in the next block, the first consonant L makes its sound with its own block, and the second G consonant takes the position of the round empty consonant in the initial of the next block. So it becomes 달기, 달기. Okay? It's like the easiest game you did when you were a kid with the plastic blocks of a square, triangle, and circle, right? It's nothing. Okay, this is the end of Lesson 7 Part 1. You are going to learn more pronunciation or sound changing rules in Korean in the next video. 그럼 다음 비디오에서 만나요. 안녕히 계세요.